I've a little confession to make. Every time, without exception, every time I sit down to narrate for this show, I'm sorry to say, I have to watch 3 hours of Andromeda.
Okay, so I live in the first world, and that means that I suffer from too much choice. Movies, clothes, soft drinks, consumer electronics, pornographic adaptations of Shakespearean plays, and most recently, I have to choose a syndrome, because I think a syndrome will make me that much more interesting. Because if there's one thing people want to hear about at a party, it's your health problems. But obviously, I don't want to go with anything too horrible, otherwise I might suffer the worst first world problem of all: inconvenience. So, I've assembled a short list that we're all going to work through over the course of this episode, and by the end, I think we'll both be better prepared to pick a great syndrome out of what is frankly a very crowded market. But first, I'd just like to clarify that what a syndrome is a grouping of signs and symptoms which combine to create a specific condition. So, let's say you can't get halfway through a sentence without using a jump cut, do nothing but shamelessly copy other people's gimmicks that they've had success with, and regurgitate other people's content, well then, you just might have irritating web show syndrome. First on my short list of fashionable syndromes for 2010 is foreign accent syndrome, if only because it's exactly what it says on the tin. See, as a result of a stroke or head injury or brain injury, you end up speaking with a completely different accent. You don't even have to have been to the other country or region, and it can happen years after you actually have the initial injury or stroke. The most curious example is that of Cindy Lou Romberg from Port Angeles in America. 17 years after a brain injury, she not only began speaking with a Russian accent, but she peppered it with the kind of grammatical errors we associate with Russians whose English isn't that hot. All of this gives me hope that in true cartoon style, I might get bopped on the head and turn into a completely different person. Or at least, maybe I could finally get a decent German accent. Now, one thing people are often mining for when they tell other folk about their condition is sympathy. And the best syndrome for that is easily Irukandji syndrome, which is caused by the sting of an Australian jellyfish no larger than a square centimeter, whose venom causes some of the most incredible pain known to man. Australian researcher Teresa Cart let herself be stung by one of these jellyfish as part of an experiment, and was quoted as saying that even under the maximum dose of morphine, the pain was excruciating. Meanwhile, another woman who was stung described the very minimum amount of pain as being on par with when you're in labor, having a baby, and you reach the peak of contraction, that absolute peak, and you feel like you just can't do it anymore, and then it builds from there. The psychological element that makes this a syndrome, as opposed to just a terrible, terrible bite, is the impending sense of doom that comes with the pain. Now, I reckon it would be pretty interesting if you could separate the doom from the pain, and then take that doom and use it like a practical joke or something, like put an impending sense of doom in your buddy's drink before he goes off to write a test or go on a date. But anyways, I think that the excruciating, terrible amounts of pain definitely disqualify Irukandji syndrome from being my pick for 2010. Stendhal syndrome doesn't involve any pain, however, and it's given an air of classiness by the fact that its name is taken from the pen name of 19th century French author Henri-Marie Béraud. And this is on account of his incredibly vivid descriptions of the symptoms. Symptoms include a rapid heartbeat, dizziness, confusion, hallucinations, and these are all brought on by being exposed to art. If the work of art is particularly striking, or if there's a lot of art gathered in one place, then reactions tend to be even more severe. For example, Stendhal syndrome has also been applied to cases where people have just lost their minds, otherwise sane individuals have just gone and attacked art. For example, just last August, a Russian tourist at the Louvre chucked a souvenir mug right at the Mona Lisa. Bulletproof glass protected the Mona Lisa just fine. And now that I think about it, Stendhal syndrome could provide a bulletproof alibi for antisocial behavior. Pissed off that yet another conceptual artist has made more than you make in a year simply by handing in their filthy bed as an art installation? Why not take out your frustrations and then blame it on Stendhal syndrome? Not that I have any beef with conceptual art or anything. Yes, since it gives a good excuse for bad behavior, is genuinely interesting to talk about at parties, doesn't involve excruciating pain, and doesn't require a blunt head trauma to activate it, I think I'm going to name Stendhal syndrome as the Handful of Minutes official fashionable syndrome for 2010. Sure, it'll mean my walls will have to be a lot more sparse, but at least I know my collection of Rob Schneider DVDs will be perfectly safe. Buzzing! Tune in next week where we're going to help you pick a nice little eating disorder to go on the side with your new syndrome. Though, I'll give you a little spoiler right now. My vote is for the Ouroboros disorder.
Man, I had Ouroboros disorder a few years ago. The trickiest part was finding a new way to prepare my toes each night. Almost as hard as being a breatharian.
You can't get halfway through a sentence without using a jump cut, or you shamelessly copy other people's gimmicks that they've had good luck for fortune. Yes. So, oh God, cut. Cat. From too much choice. Movies, pop, soft drinks, which are also pop, candy bars. Fuck. Sorry, why is this the hardest thing ever? Soft drinks.